More than 300 people have been charged in connection with the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, and federal prosecutors say more arrests are expected to come. According to charging documents reviewed by CBS News, of those already charged, more than 100 have also been indicted by grand juries. CBS News reporter Cassidy McDonald has been following this story and has more for us. Thanks for joining us. So listen, what is the latest that you can tell us on the investigation, and what makes this investigation particularly unique?
Right. Like you said, over 300 people so far have been charged for their participation in the riot, and prosecutors said last week that they expected to add an additional 100 people at least to that large group. So that would bring the total to at least around 400 people. And just for context here, Capitol Police have said that well over 10,000 people were actually on Capitol grounds that day, though only about 800 actually entered the Capitol building. So it's a huge number of people who have been charged. But again, this was a large riot. This was a large event. And prosecutors said last week that this is perhaps the most complex investigation ever prosecuted by the Department of Justice. So it's certainly unique, and prosecutors have also called it unprecedented for that reason.
How much evidence have investigators collected so far?
Yes, these are cases with a lot of evidence, and even wading through that evidence is a time-consuming task. So first of all, at least 14 law enforcement agencies actually responded to the attack on that day. So they're wading through evidence from all of those agencies. And as we've reported, the people who have been charged in this attack actually came from at least 42 different states plus DC. So they're also coordinating evidence from across the country. The government says that they've executed more than 900 search warrants in almost all 50 states. And they've collected 15,000 hours of surveillance and body camera footage. So that's a lot to watch through alone. And if that wasn't enough, they've also received hundreds of thousands of tips from citizens. So FBI Director Christopher Wray said that they've received 270,000 tips. Many of those include video, photo, social media accounts. And so those are all things that prosecutors will need to review, and that's going to take some time.
So I imagine there's a range of charges. We sort of tend to zero in on kind of the most high-profile ones, but what are the most common charges that people are facing, and then what are the more serious ones?
Right. So one very common charge that we've seen is this restricted buildings or grounds charge. So that just means that the person is accused of being in an area of the Capitol that they weren't supposed to be in. So that's a pretty common one. As you can imagine, many of these cases involve photo and video evidence of people who were located in the Capitol. But there have also been some more serious and complex charges. For example, last week, we actually saw a number who were arrested and charged for assaulting officers. So two men were charged with assault of Officer Brian Sicknick, who died responding to the attack. And another was arrested and charged with assaulting Officer Mike Fanone, who was pulled alone into a crowd on the steps of the U.S. Capitol. He says he was beaten. Prosecutors say that in the case of the man who was arrested most recently, that he pulled off his police radio and his police badge. So these are very serious cases. And another serious charge we've seen is conspiracy. At least 20 people have been charged with conspiracy. So that just means that they coordinated or planned with someone else to commit an offense. But this goes to show the level of planning that may have taken place, in some cases on the day of the attack, and in some cases in days, weeks, and months before.
So, Cassidy, of those arrested, how many have extremist affiliations? What are investigators saying about some of the groups that took part in the attack? And we should note that numerous intelligence officials have testified on Capitol Hill that these were not members of Black Lives Matter or Antifa, that what they've seen are people that were affiliated with white supremacist groups. So I'm trying to understand how many of those that have been taken into custody or arrested were part of those groups.
Right. So prosecutors have explicitly linked at least 48 rioters who have been arrested and charged with affiliations with extremist groups. So that's groups like the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers is another common one, as well as the conspiracy group QAnon, the conspiracy ideology. And in some of these cases, not all of them, prosecutors have also pointed to coordination among some of these people who are affiliated with the group. So in one example, prosecutors have now charged 10 people in this large indictment, charged them as co-conspirators. And these people are all alleged to be members of the Oath Keepers. So prosecutors here say that this group planned together, they coordinated their travel, some of them stayed in the same hotel, and in the case of the person who was most recently added as the defendant, they said that he made payments to something called Oath Keepers Inc., and that he attended or organized around 30 meetings with online conference call software. One of those was titled DC Planning Call. So these are cases with a lot of planning and coordination, and it's going to be interesting to see how these cases play out with different groups.
All right, Cassidy McDonald reporting for us. Cassidy, thank you.
Thank you.